I'm
Furious
saying
was
like
based off Hunts Point, bro. Dead serious.
Really?
Look that up. Fast and Furious was based off Hunts Point.
this is the guy who they say Fast and Furious is based off of.
You know, when they said, you know, a Motec exhaust.
Yeah.
And there was a technical advisor there, and it was so simple to fix it. All you had to do was put an "and" in the middle, say a Motec and an exhaust. The car that made me the most famous out in the street was the 300ZX. Because they say, oh, you have nitrous, you have this. But in those days, you're not looking at my hood. You're racing, you can look at the car outside. That's all you can do.
Nobody pops their hoods.
You can't, that's not my problem.
The motors back then, how do they compare to what's out now?
That's one thing that I really want to talk to new kids about. I find that there's a big disrespect for horsepower. Kids nowadays, they just think that it's just racing and that's it, and they go home. You know, there was more to it. And then, you know, they got the most stupid rules now that if you leave before the light, you lose. I mean, how could you lose because you left, you know, you do the race over. This is street racing. This is, might as well come to the track. They got lights here, then you lose.
Welcome back to another episode of the Street Alpha Podcast. I am your host, Tukes. We are out here in Maryland, over here for Import versus Domestic World Cup Finals. And today we have an OG, and actually the first, I would say, like, legendary OG on the podcast. We're going to get that perspective today, and we're going to talk about how it was back in the 80s, I believe, right? 80s, early 90s in street racing scene. So today, let's welcome our guest, Ralphy from DRT Racing.
Hi. Thank you.
How you doing, man?
Good. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate
for having me on the podcast.
I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. So there's a lot to talk about. I know we spoke about things offline. And I'm more interested in actually how things were back in the 80s, and how you actually started the street racing, and then how it led to where we are today. So you guys might hear some sound. It's going on in the background. It's cool. We're actually at an event. You guys are qualifying today, right?
Correct.
Yeah, part of the experience. All right. So you told me yesterday that you were racing for money back in the day, and that's how you were making a living.
Correct. Well, I first of all, I started, you know, since before I was racing. I saw racing before I was actually driving.
Okay.
And that's what caught my interest. That's really what caught my interest. I used to go to a park in 190th Street on Amsterdam and ride bicycle, just go to the park, and I saw people like arguing, which I thought was arguing.
Yeah.
You know, I was 11 years old. So, and I got closer and closer, and then I saw that they were exchanging money and talking, and it caught my interest, but nothing at that time. And then by high school, when I left junior high school, I went to automotive high school in Brooklyn.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a short term, because going on the train, I would pass a stop. I'll fall asleep all the time. So I changed over after the first semester.
Where did you grow up at, though?
Huh?
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Washington Heights.
Washington Heights.
Yeah, I grew up in Washington Heights. And then, you know, that really got my interest. They teach you the basics there. I took some machine shop, brakes and little things like that. And he actually, I got into cars that way. And then building the model cars that they used to have before. So it just caught my interest, basically. That's how I started.
Was street racing very popular at that time in Washington Heights?
Yes.
So what were some of the locations that were really popular back then?
So where I first got started was 190th Street in Amsterdam, behind the high school, behind George Washington High School. And that's basically where I saw the first time of racing. It wasn't much. It was a very short thing, but that's what we had. That's what they had, and that's what they passed on to us. So basically that's how I got started. And it was right after a bit of, I was in high school, that I started to drive.
Yeah.
I was working at a auto body shop, and one day the guy asked me if I knew how to drive a car, and I said yeah, and it was automatic, so I kind of drove it in, but he knew I didn't know how to drive, and basically that's how I got my first driving experience, actually.
So what were some of the cars that were popular back in the day when you first started?
So the most popular car was the Datsun 510, which was my very first car.
A Datsun?
Yeah, a Datsun 510. So my very first car was a 1972 Datsun 510. The Corollas, 1970 Corollas. After the 510, I had a couple of RX2s. I went into Mazda for a little while.
Okay.
The Mazda thing was more of a challenge because I come from a Dominican community, which
Right.
in those days they used to say that those motors couldn't be rebuilt, they couldn't be touched or whatever. So I just got into it, and they were fast.
Yeah.
They were way faster than everything else at that time.
If you can get them to work. Basically.
Yeah, well, even stock, they were
Even
just
stock.
they were just faster. They were just way
Yeah.
faster than everything else. So it caught my attention for a little while, but then I got away from it afterwards.
Is the RX-7 thing like more of a Puerto Rican thing, or it's just like a
Yeah, well, it is, especially nowadays.
Right.
It is. They were way ahead of us,
Right.
in technology and all that, and knowing the engine as well.
So when you were building, you had the Datsun. That was your first actual build where you started street racing with it?
Yes, and I bought that car for $500.
For how much?
Yeah, $500 back then, which
Five-
was a lot of money.
Okay, all right. So hold on. What at $500? What do you get with $500 back then, as opposed
Well, I got a car that I had to do some work to it, of course.
Okay.
It was a used car, but and I had DJ equipment at that time, and I sold all my DJ equipment, and then my mom gave me some more money to put in and buy the car. But interesting enough, I kept rebuilding it and changing parts, and that's more or less how I got my hands on the mechanic side of it.
to? Right.
Always interested me. My father was a construction worker, so I see him making things, so it kind of rubbed off to me as well.
Right. Right.
I just wasn't into the construction heavy lifting stuff.
Yeah. The heavy labor. I
So-
mean, we've all done that. We've all been there where we had to do some
Yeah,
manual labor
so-
growing up.
So that kind of rubbed up to me, and that's how I got started.
All right. So you had the Datsun, right? And you started street racing with that car, right?
Correct. Well,
Okay.
not really. Well, you can call it street racing because I was, but nothing for money, nothing for just for fun. Let's say
Just for
it was
fun.
Just most back in those days, racing was we go to have fun. So we'll meet on Sundays or we meet on weekends. From there, I went to Chase Stadium.
Okay.
So Chase Stadium was my second spot. It was more serious there. But at Chase Stadium, the good part about it is that you just stood at the line, right? You park at the line and somebody parks next to you and you ran all day. So it was races all day,
Right,
all day,
right.
all day for fun. And then there were big races for money. They will bring them up to the like the highway. So
The highway.
Yeah. So we will move from the junkyards up to the highways, and then they will race there for the big money.
What year was this?
Like
around
86,
86.
85, 86.
Okay, so
1985,
I wasn't born in the 80s. Of course, I'm 91. But
You're
back
making me
then,
look old now.
so back then, how were you able to, because nowadays social media, cell phones is, you can call people and text people.
Correct.
What were you doing back then in order to connect? And
So
how did you know where
basically
the meetup spots
it was
were?
word of mouth, shop
Okay.
to shop, hanging out spots, and we knew that Friday nights, Saturday nights we'll go there.
Yeah.
Sunday nights we used to go to Fountain. I never went to Brooklyn too much. I never liked Brooklyn.
Fountain Ave?
Yeah, Fountain Avenue, by Pennsylvania Avenue.
Right.
I never liked to go to Brooklyn. I found Brooklyn like very hard to get around with, and
Yeah.
plus Brooklyn had a really bad reputation back then. It was really, it's really bad.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Back then, in the 80s, I heard it was like a whole different area.
So did the Bronx. The Bronx was all abandoned buildings, burned buildings.
Yeah.
Especially Hunts Point, which was the next spot that I moved up to,
Ah.
and where I was really now beginning to race now.
Hunts Point.
Yeah, Hunts Point. correct.
Okay. So I had GSF on the podcast. You guys remember GSF's episode, and they had mentioned that you Fast and Furious is based off of a guy from Hunts Point.
Yeah.
So this is the guy who they say, you can clarify it, but they say Fast and Furious is based off of. So can you talk about that?
So it was all just struck a luck. There was a guy from the writer from the Daily News named Ken Lee. He was writing a story about things that happened in New York, and he went over to the track in Long Island when it was open. It's closed now, but when it was open back then, it was on a Sunday. It was just supposed to be a Sunday paper thing on the extras.
Right.
And he did a short story, and he got interested. So he started asking people about street racing, and he ended up in this place in Queens called Eastern Auto Sports, which used to sell parts. And a lot of people was mentioning my name.
Right.
I had a friend of mine, Javier Ortega. He said, you should talk to Ralphy. He does a lot of street racing. and he always wanted to meet me. And then the day came and we met, and I agreed to do the story.
Racer X.
So he
yes.
called the Racer X based on the cartoon. He thought it was a cool name.
Right.
It didn't matter to me what the name was. So I said, I agree. And we lasted 2 years. We lasted 2 years doing that story. I'm like, for a while, I was like, is the story ever going to come out?
Yeah.
We kept meeting in places. It took probably 6 months after we were into the story to actually let people come with the camera and take pictures. Then eventually we got like little videos. He got little videos of it. And then in May 1998, the story came out, was published in Vibe. He called me. I ran to buy it because the story was supposed to be short. It was supposed to be a quarter page.
Okay.
And when he was handing it over to his editor, the editor said, well, this is interesting. We need to get more. To get more. Yeah, it ended up being, I think, a 2-page story.
2 pages.
Which was a lot in Vibe magazine back then.
Right.
That was the cover with Master P on it.
Master P.
Master P. Yeah.
That was when he first came out, right?
That's why he was on the cover. That's when he really blew up.
Dude, that's huge.
So that was the cover of that, and the story was in it.
What?
It was May 1998. I have opened DRT on November 1997. So it was great for me. Because now I got, there's no social media. Nothing better than a magazine. That's all we had, magazines. We had car magazines. So now I'm in a magazine. And but the story didn't get around so much. People were asking, is that true? I'm like, well, the story's there.
Yeah.
And then when one day he calls me and he goes, listen, I think I'm gonna give the story. I'm gonna get an agent to get the story going. He got an agent and he sold the story to Hollywood. He called me when he sold the story and I said, oh, congratulations, everything's good. I didn't want anything out of it.
Yeah.
And I was just happy. I'm like, I don't even know where that's going. I was in my own world, man. I just wanted to make my money and And I was doing good, so I didn't care. I was young. And then one day he calls me, hey, the movie's gonna be out.
So you didn't know what movie it was gonna be at the time?
No, I did speak to a few of the writers. They actually came to New York. I drove them around to different places.
Yeah.
They saw, and I always say in any interview, like, so the story when they first get to the scene, that they come on top of the mountain and they look down and all the abandoned buildings and the music. That's the writer that was here. And I always say that I didn't like the movie, by the way, but
you mentioned that in the comments.
Yeah, but he got that part really, really correct.
That's the part that people that I think Grimm had mentioned. He said that whole scene was basically like supposed to represent New York.
Yeah,
and I think people were kind of upset about that. They feel like, oh, New York feels like they started everything. I'm like, I don't really think it's that.
In those days there was a big West Coast, East Coast thing, even on rap. Even on rap and
Tupac
everything.
and Biggie.
Yeah, so everything was a big. And the funny thing that people don't know is that the movie was actually supposed to be filmed in New York. But for budget reasons, they kept it out in LA, basically.
Were any parts of that movie like inspired by LA street racing as well, or you think it was just basically based off the article?
I don't think so. I mean, LA says they had a big street racing following or whatever. Well, we don't see anything. And anybody you talk to in the East Coast has stories of racing in the East Coast.
Right.
The Asian market was big out there in LA. Filipinos and were racing actually.
Right.
But up to this day, you don't see many of them talking about it. So I think they started maybe later in the 90s or something like that. That's when the competition, I guess, started to be with the East Coast.
Yeah.
But even now with import racing and this type of racing, we're bigger in the East Coast than they are in the West Coast. So I don't know. I don't want to get into that fight.
No. That's the thing, though. I think that some people were mentioning that street racing didn't start in New York. I don't think that just because the article was based or the movie was based off the article, that people you're saying that. I think it has to do with more so like the movie itself. Fast and Furious is based off of. And
for a long time, it wasn't known. The article was there, so for most people that have the original DVD, and you can look them up in eBay, they have the original DVD.
Yeah.
So the story is in the DVD, and in the back of it, it says the story that inspired the movie. What happened was 6 months after it was out, they took that out.
Yeah.
They pulled back all the DVDs. They took it out because they used my name.
Right.
And my name wasn't part of the deal. So I never wanted to be part of the movie until 2015 when Vive called me up and they said, look, we want to do a reunion. 7 was going to be out that year. And they were in charge of doing the marketing and all that. And they did different interviews.
Interviews, right.
With each and every one of the characters, and then they interviewed Ken and myself at my shop. And when that came out, then my phone, then we had social media, we had everything. Now everything is like, oh, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? So I'm like, well, might as well ride this wave now, because I got off the wave back then. And people started to contact me and talk to me, and I'm like, look, it was just a story. I got nothing to do with the movie. I don't want anything to do with the movie. They made so many mistakes because I was there
in the original.
Oh yeah, I was there for the first time they showed the movie.
Right.
Because they actually, what they do is, so they do a special presentation where they bring actual people and they have all the critics there. So the critics, when the crowd goes wow, when they go crazy, the critics can hear that, and then they give a better review. So that's what they were doing, and they make like a big example that everybody makes fun of it. I mean, I'm surprised they don't kill it now because it's so old. But when they said a Moltec exhaust.
Yeah.
And there was a technical advisor there, and it was so simple to fix it. All you had to do was put an "and" in the middle, say a Moltec and an exhaust.
Oh, he said Moltec exhaust.
And there's no such thing, so he looked really stupid.
Yeah. So that's funny. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But some of those mistakes that may have been like an issue to the actual people the story was based off of, or even the tech advisors, like those moments are like moments that people remember the most.
Yes.
You know?
Which is crazy. They don't remember other things. So,
right.
So a big thing that everybody was like, oh, do you go out and steal cars? Do you go out and steal TV? I'm like, no. You see, that's why I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
Like they feed off the negative stuff, never the positive stuff. So
maybe it is a good thing that they didn't really, that you kind of weren't out there.
But after 2015, then I started doing more things and started to talk about more and giving out the story, because a lot of people want to hear it for some reason.
Yeah.
So. I feel like I said, like I spoke to you before, I feel we as older generation have a need to actually show the new generation talk to them about street racing, about the stupid things they're doing. But then again, we did stupid too back then, so we kind of like try to make it less stupid, trying to fix it.
No, of course,
that's what it is. But I feel the baton was passed on to me as a street racer. I feel that I passed it along a long time ago, but I feel the need now that people look at me like as a spokesman that I should talk more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a huge thing, and actually, especially representing New York as you did, most people didn't really know that, but now that people, it's actually out there and the proof is there that the movie was based off of you. You definitely should be a spokesman for that generation for sure. Yep. So going back to the early days. You mentioned some experiences you had back then with street racing. Can you talk about what the vibe was like back then, as opposed to? I mean, I'm not sure if you've been outside now. Probably not.
Yeah. Well, like right now, I've been to a couple of street races.
Okay.
And it's just like a one race type of thing.
Right.
So they set up a race, whatever. They do it on Instagram. They do it on their phones. They text. We didn't have any of that. So we will meet every weekend. So every weekend was packed. For us, every weekend was packed. And then you never knew what we were doing. We didn't know who we were racing, but we were racing.
Right.
It was a lot of, they think they talk now. You got to see what we used to do. I had to actually just heckle you so you can race me. That's the way it was. I'm going to set you up for you to race me. I'm going to get you upset. I'm going to do, there's a million tricks. Kids nowadays, they just think that it's just racing and that's it, and they go home. There was more to it. And to me, after a little while, it became more of a business, because now I don't work. This is what I'm making money out of. So,
How much money, you mentioned how much money you were making back then. You were making a living off of street racing back then.
Yeah,
Huh?
we made $4,000 or $5,000 a week easy because I wouldn't race for less than $1,000. So that was a rule. Like, there's no way I'm going to race for less than $1,000. Don't wasting my time.
Yeah. So how many people, let's say for a pot of $4,000, right? How many people do you think would be in that pot?
It depended on the night. It depended on the night, but like like I said before to you, I had a following, and so my followers always will be in my pot, no matter, regardless. Even if I knew I was gonna win by a mile, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to keep them in there because they always support me. So it's like, I know I'm gonna win money, you're gonna win money. But the one rule I had was we will race back. You know, we will do I always give you want to race again, we'll race again. I don't have a problem with that. So if we race again, the money has to stay. You can't take your money out. If you took your money out, you're never betting with me again. That was my rule.
Superstition, basically.
Yeah, like I feel you bringing negative vibe. Why are you taking your money out? You're unsure now. You want money, so what's the big deal?
Right. So when it came to doing money runs back then, right? What were some like the biggest pots you had back in those days?
So we raced for 5,000, 1,000, 2,000. The biggest race I had was 20,000 in one night.
20,000.
Yeah, but it wasn't one race. It was over and over. So we were duplicating the money.
Okay.
Yeah. So we raced like 4 times that night. So by the end of the night, it was a $20,000 pot.
Wow. So you mentioned also that you guys don't do the flashlight situation. You guys race off the hand.
I mean, I don't know whether they're looking at Street Outlaws and following that. And then they got the most stupid rules now that if you leave before the light, you lose. I mean, how could you lose because you left? You do the race over. This is street racing. This is might as well come to the track. They got lights here. Then you lose. Then there's no argument. There's no video. There's nothing.
Right.
But we used to do it with our hands and ask if you're ready. You're ready. Hand goes up. Hand comes down.
Right.
But the rule is also that if the hands never came down, if one car left and the other one chased it, a chase is a race. You better continue because that's it. The race is on. There's no going back. But if one guy take off, one guy stays, even if the hands came down, we'll come back.
Okay, then you rerun it.
Yeah, we rerun.
Not rerun, but like you run it.
We'll start again.
What if somebody breaks down?
Oh, we usually have a punk. We call it punk out money.
Okay.
So punk out money is you put either 100, 500, 1,000, whatever amount of money they agree on.
Yeah.
And we agree on a time. And if you're not ready at a time, you lose that money.
Right.
Nowadays, I think they give you like time to get it fixed. They do it sometimes, and they have time to get it fixed. But you lost that money, and then now we can race. I'll wait for you. We can race again, but we're gonna gather more money.
So do you think it was like a hustle back then? Or because I look at it now as like they're not doing it for the love for street racing. They're doing it more for like, I just want to get my money.
They're doing it for the gram.
Yeah, or doing it for the gram, I guess.
They're doing it for the gram. Everybody wants to be famous in Instagram and social media.
Right.
Basically, yeah. I mean, my experiences and my like what I call my rules came more from like pool hustling. I used to go to see people play pool, and when a hustler comes, he makes it look like he's lucky. Like, oh, he'll bank off a 4 and get it in the corner. Oh man, I wanted to get it in there. I'm lucky. Oh yeah, and he'll hustle off out of $100 real quick. And you think he's lucky, but really he's got you beat.
Right.
You don't even know it. And then by the time you realize that you're a couple of $100 out. So most of my things came from seeing people playing pool.
Did you guys ever do the money on the hood situation? Have you ever seen that before?
The money on the what?
So like, let's say if you win the race, and you get the pot, they put the money on the hood. They put your name on the hood and the money.
Oh,
no, you never seen that before?
No, we never.
No?
I never seen that. No. Well, the way we used to do it, we used to have pen and paper, just record everybody's name, whatever they put. Here's the money, give it to the judge, and that's it.
Okay.
And then the judge will have it, and then it'll be his decision. He'll be at the end. If we're arguing, let's say it's a close race, it's his decision. Whatever he says goes.
Yeah.
There's no argument about it.
It's so different now. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't know because I wasn't back then, but it's just like, you kind of wish it was like that, but times change. Yeah. Things are a lot different.
Things evolve. I say it's a lot harder to race now because of, cops got ahead of us. There's cameras everywhere. All we had was for them to call on the radio, and by the time they called, we were gone.
Yeah.
And even when they used to catch us, we will pull over, wait until he got out the car, then take off, and it's like by the time he's on and back in the car, we're gone. And all he could do is call it in, and that's it.
Right.
So it was a lot easier. I think it was a lot easier. And plus, also, if we had registration, insurance, and a license, it was hard for them to like take your car or do anything, or just could give you a ticket. That's it, because you wouldn't. There was nothing wrong with. There was nothing illegal about racing in those days.
Right.
Like they can't take your car for it until maybe like the 90s. The 90s, that's when they started to put the rules and seeing that it was a problem. And they actually started to confiscate cars, impounding them, but you still get it back a few days later.
Right.
You know, you get a lawyer, whatever, get the car back. So it was a lot easier. Now they crush your cars. So
there's a lot more going on, a lot more activities going on, a lot more different cultures now that have evolved, and now they just put everybody in the same group. Yeah. Whether you're doing a car show, whether you're doing street racing, takeover, whatever it is.
Even the guy with the music, they consider
the music guys too.
Street racing. So it's a different situation now. Definitely a different situation. I think a lot harder for them. Like,
what were the cars that had the most competition with you?
So I was always an import guy. I was never an American car. From day one, I was never. I found American cars boring. Because it was easy. You can get power out of a V8. We were running we were running 14s back then when we used to go to the track. They used to laugh at us. But now, we evolve and we're racing with them now. Now they're like, what you got in there?
I know.
In 1997, I put together a Honda and I started to go to Englishtown. It was a friend of mine's car. I put it together, and we were going 1130s back then, which was really fast.
1130s?
Yeah, and then I used to drive the car to the track, put on the slicks, go run 1130. So the American guys would always go, what you got under there? I said, well, I got a little motor, I got a 4-cylinder. But they always wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Because they knew it was fast. And we were evolving by those years. We already started to evolve.
Right.
And turbo era came in and a lot of situations. But when we first started, like I said, the Datsun 510 was a big car. The Toyota Corollas were big.
Mm-hmm.
The Mazdas RX2, RX3, R100, they were very, very popular back then.
Right.
So the crowd that we dealt with was mostly import. So that's why I grew up mostly liking imports.
Yeah.
And not the American cars.
So you didn't really street race a lot of American cars back then, or you were just lining up against a lot of imports?
Maybe once in a while. Later in my when I had the 300ZX, I raced a couple of IROC C's and stuff like that, because they thought, like, what can he have under there? But that car was twin turbo.
Right.
So, and it was 1990, the same year the car came out. So there wasn't much out there for the car. But we were competitive with the American cars.
So the motors back then, and how they built them in the early 90s, late 80s, how do they compare to what's out now?
Oh my God. So that's one thing that I really want to talk to new kids about, because I find that there's a big disrespect for horsepower. So, and don't take me out of content on that.
No, of course.
People will, believe me, will take me out of content for that. But I'll explain. So a Datsun 510 had 90 horsepower.
90 horsepower?
Yeah. So think about it. 90 horsepower, we thought we were racing. Cars now come with 400, 500, 600. So that's why I say there's a big disrespect, because these kids begin to drive and they getting on a car that has 500 horsepower already, which, I mean, we had to learn how to drive 90.
Right.
So, and then we evolved little by little into the power. So we respected when we made a little power.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a good example. The Toyota Supra came out in
94, yes.
94, 280 horsepower. And nowadays, what are they making? 2,000, 2,500, 1,500. You know what I mean?
It took years, but yeah.
Because everything has evolved. The turbo era. We couldn't run, when the turbo era came out, we couldn't run more than 10 pounds of boost. Motors will break, everything. Nowadays, they run 100 pounds of boost. So everything evolved, and the new generation is getting this all at once, and they're not realizing that you have to tame the beast before you ride it.
Right.
That's basically what it is. So that's why I say there's a big disrespect on power. Like when anybody comes to my shop, to the dyno, I always ask, how much power you want to make, because I have a lot of experience on setups and builds. So I know if your setup is gonna make, or I'll be close to what your setup is gonna make by looking at what you have. Some people come, oh, I want to make 1,000. Well, you can't. You know, I don't even want to get started because you can't make 1,000.
Right.
It's impossible, and they get discouraged. But I'm just being truthful and trying to guide them in the right direction, where they can make that kind of power if they want to later.
Were turbo cars popular back then?
Early 90s.
Early
So
90s.
my first turbo car was a Mitsubishi Starion,
Okay.
and that was 1987.
Right.
And that they came out, I think, in 85 was the first year of them.
Okay.
And then in 87, they changed the body. They made it like a wide body with square flares and all that, and 9-inch tires. It looked really nice. It wasn't the fastest car, but it was fast.
Right.
It was fast, and those cars made me a lot of money.
Now.
But the car that made me the most famous out in the street was the 300ZX.
300ZX.
Yep. That's the car. That's the car I won the most money on it. It wasn't mine. It was a good friend of mine that he's not here with us anymore, unfortunately. And he actually went to buy a Pathfinder and paid for the Pathfinder and everything. And when he went in, the car was on the showroom floor. He said, "No, I'm taking this." And the guy's like, "But I saw you a Pathfinder." "No, I don't want it anymore. I'm going to take this." So he shows up with that, and it's funny because I drove it. And I took it. We used to run a mile after by those years. We used to run a mile down in Dyckman Street.
Right.
And he came with the car, and I took it down the mile. And you know, I'm usually smiling or I laugh when I want to rub off some stress.
Yeah.
And I was impressed with the speed because I haven't been that fast in a car. And I'm laughing. I'm like, wow, this thing is good. So he asked me, well, how many cars do you think we can give a Starion? You know, there was a guy with a Starion that he wanted to race, and I'm like, you know, we could probably give him 15 cars. I think this thing's really fast.
Right.
But you know, you don't want to give him 15 right off the bat. You want to. When I knew what I can give you, I will give you less. That way we can continue racing. So that's the way to hustle.
Right.
And
that's smart.
we go out that night, and he tells the guy, "Yeah, I'll give you 15 cars right off the back." I'm like, "What's wrong with you, dude?" I told you. And he lost the very first race in that car.
Damn.
And I was supposed to drive the car, but the guy said I couldn't drive it. So when he beat him, he's like, "I don't care who gets in. You know, anybody can drive it."
Yeah.
So I had to give him 17 cars. That's the only way I was get to drive it. So the guy's like, "Come on, drive it." I said, "Okay, let me put some money." He's like, "Come on." That was a $5,000 race. He lost $5,000 that he put himself. Nobody went with him.
Yo,
He
that's
put himself.
wild.
So I'm like, okay, let me put $1,000 because he wanted to race for 7 now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put $1,000. He's like, "Come on, let me put the money because I lost 5. That way I get my 5 back, and then you guys can put the 2,000." So I got people with me, so we had to split the 2,000. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I gave him 17 cars, and the way we did it in the mile is, you get 17 cars rolling start from the back. So the way people do it now, they spot you in front, and you guys stay together, right? They take off together. No, I had to be standing at the start, and I get ready, and the flag man just tells them when I'm ready. Or I have the hazard lights, and I turn them off when I'm ready to go. And I'm looking in the mirror, so when he gets to me, I take off.
Oh, so it's different then.
So by the time he passes me, he's in second gear.
So you got to start. You just got.
And then I got to do my thing. I got to launch. I forget it. So my mentality is always, I forget about the car. I concentrate on what I'm doing because it's a mile long. So the mile it wasn't a straight mile. It had little bends, but we went straight through the bends. We went straight to the bend. So until I got out of the bend, I wouldn't even know where you were at. I don't even want to know because I know I can't catch you with that amount of head start that I gave you.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I came out of those turns, if I'm behind you and you're not pulling on me, you're done. I knew that. That I knew. Any car that's not pulling is done. So usually I've already caught up some. I'm like, okay, so I'll try to catch up and I back up a little bit.
Right.
And try to play with you so I can race you again.
Yeah, so you can run it back and then.
So I can race you again. So if I came out of that turn and you were like far, but you're not pulling, I'm like, okay, I got to work.
Yeah.
So I got to I put 5th gear there. That was the gear was 5th. And then in 5th gear, it would just start pulling you. At the end, there was a little like a little hill.
Right.
And then the sign was there. So usually I will start to draft you. So you're blocking my wind so I can pick up more speed. And then right at that right at that hill, I will come out, and then the hill will push me down, and I'll beat you by a fender or a car. That's the way I used to drive over. So everybody used to hate me for that because they say, "Oh, you have nitrous, you have this." But in those days, you're not looking at my hood. You're racing. You can look at the car outside. That's all you can do.
Nobody pops their hoods.
You can't. That's not my problem. You what you see is what you get.
Right.
And I don't look at yours.
Wow.
That's another hustle I had. You say I have nitrous, I bet you $1,000 I don't. I put it on top of the car. Nobody puts it. Okay, I'll take my $1,000 back. So, put your money where your mouth is.
Yo,
But
that's dope.
it's a good bluff. It's like poker. So, I had to bluff it. If I had it, you didn't know. You want to know? Cost you $1,000. You're gonna win $1,000. If you're sure you have it, you get $1,000.
So that 300ZX was a feared car back then.
Yeah, it was a fear car back then. Yes.
What was done to it? I mean, you can say now because.
Oh well, that car. So when the first race was really stock.
Okay.
But it was just superior of.
It was twin turbo.
It was twin turbo.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So it was the VG motor, and but right from that race, there was a place in Long Island called Prototype.
Okay.
Which I used to go there a lot, and they used to do most of the heavy work there. I still know some of the guys that work there. I used to work there. He actually took it there and spent like $10,000 on the car. So
$10,000.
Yeah, so we changed, and everything was HKS. HKS had just come to the United States in those days, which everything was HKS on the car. Intercoolers. We had what they call an FCON. We didn't have any programmable ECUs. It was just something that you put in between it, a piggyback.
Yeah.
And it will control injectors and things like that.
Oh, piggybacked. Okay.
Yeah. And so it had that. It had intercoolers. It has bigger turbos, which gave it we never put that car in a dyno. We didn't have dynos back then.
There was no dynos back then.
No. It's just go out in the street and race it. I used to.
Oh, wow.
My dyno was I would go to the mile. I had a stopwatch and I would do my stopwatch and I know what I picked up. It wasn't 100%, but if I picked up a second, let's say I picked up half with a margin of error, still it picked up.
Right.
Basically, so.
How are you messing with the turbos back then? Like same way it works now? Nothing's different basically? In terms of
basically
boost?
everything was bolt on.
Bolt on.
Not like now that we have way big turbos and all that.
Right.
It was just an upgrade on a turbo.
Okay.
Which we didn't know what we were getting. They were just HKS and it was a brand. It was a brand type of thing. But they did work and he'll give us more boost. The most boost we ever ran on that thing was 20 pounds.
25?
20 pounds.
Oh,
we
20
wouldn't pass
pounds.
20 pounds. After that, they will blow up. Rods wouldn't hold. Turbo technology was very early in the day. So, rods, motors weren't that strong. Rods weren't that strong. He did speak to, because the guy had a lot of money. We did speak to HKS on building an engine, and it was $30,000 back then. So he wasn't willing to spend that. $30,000.
$30,000.
That was big money.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still kind of a lot of money
Yeah.
now, depending on where.
Well, you can come up with it now. But
Yeah.
back then, I mean, the whole car cost $30,000 back
Right.
then. So
Right.
now you're spending what you spend on the car and the engine, and you don't know how good it's going to be. There was no warranty. So he's like, we're fine with what we got. We're fine with what we got.
So nobody was doing like sleeves or anything like that around that time?
Nothing at all. Hondas weren't even around.
What?
It wasn't a big Honda following. Remember that was the first the
That was like
92 Acura.
EF?
That's when VTEC came out.
Yeah.
So they weren't really that popular in
Right.
that first generation. The second generation of the Integra was more popular now.
Right.
That's the one that got really Hondas out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was the 1.8. So the first one was a 1.7 VTEC. It was a weird motor, like 1.7. It's weird. But it was a very good car, and it caught on, and that's when the Honda era began after that.
Okay. What were some of like the best motors at that time overall? At that time, what was the most feared engine back in the day?
In the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, turbo, the Turbo 2 turbo.
Okay.
Mazda.
Yeah, Mazda.
The Mazda, the Starion for sure, the Mitsubishi motor. The Mitsubishi motor was,
right.
I think Mitsubishi motor was one of the first ones to go 7 on a car from Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I believe so. If it wasn't, it's up there.
Right.
Yeah, it's up there. They put it in a full chassis car and it went 7s. Correct.
Wow.
So, and this was years after too. Then the 300ZX was a very big
300ZX,
motor.
right.
Porsches were really big in those eras. They were just above everything.
Yeah, but those are expensive. How much were they?
Expensive, but there were some around.
Yeah.
The $20,000 race was 2 Porsches. It wasn't my car. I was racing somebody else's car.
Oh,
So
okay.
the $20,000 race was an interesting story because I'm very superstitious, and I always believed that if I went home, I'm not coming out of my house because that's my safe haven.
Right.
So if you call me to race, I'd be like, no, I don't. I'll
Yeah,
race
nah.
you tomorrow. I don't want to race today because I always felt that something bad was going to happen.
Okay.
So that day I went home and the guy with the 300ZX called me. We got to race with a Porsche. I'm like, we were actually waiting on a part to come in. I said, the part's coming in tomorrow. Why don't we just wait and we see if we get better?
Yeah.
And we race. He's like, no, come on, I'll put the money. So I'm like, he convinced me. I'm like, all right, I'll go. And I put $500 in my pocket. Went out. I put the $500. We lose the race. I'm like, you see, man, fuck. Now I lost my $500. I should have stood home. I'm going crazy. And then it wasn't like a race night. It was a Tuesday night, Wednesday night, something like that.
Yeah.
Because we will meet in weekdays if we had a race.
Okay.
And I'm like, now I can't get my money back because there's no other cars to race. So we're there talking, and then a friend of mine comes in a Porsche, and I say, oh man, this the thing right here to get my money back. So I tell the guy, listen, you got to race this guy. Your car can beat him. You know, let's set something up.
You were that confident in the Porsche?
Well, it's another Porsche, and I know who did the work to both of them. So I knew.
So okay, got you.
I knew
right.
that car can compete with that one.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'm like, come on, man, I just lost a race. Let's try to get some money back. So he's like, nah, I won't race the car, but I'll lend it to you for you to drive it. I said, okay, give me the car. And then I'm like, but wait a minute, I don't have any money. So I'm like, oh, can you lend me $500? Everybody knew I was good for the money. So he gives me $500. I put it in the pot, and then we put a pot together. It was a couple of thousand. And we started, I think, with like 3,000-4,000. And I gave the guy gave me 2 cars from the back.
2 cars.
Yeah, by the end of the night, I was giving him 1.
What did you say?
I was giving him by the end of the night. I was giving him cars. So we raced 4 times.
Oh, wow.
The second time.
So you hustled him.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. I needed my money back. So that's basically the way it worked. I didn't know the car was that fast. I asked for cars and he gave them to me. But once I'm racing, I can see how the car.
You kind of know, right?
Yeah.
You know what you can do.
I'm like, whoa, we way faster. And believe me, in those days, it's not like now where you got all these electronics. We had a manual boost controller. So the way it worked is the owner was sitting next to me in the car.
Yeah.
And the boost controller closed. And as I put 3rd gear, he's racing the boost. That's the way it was.
Wow. Did you guys have scramble buttons too? Where you can hit it?
Wait, HKS came out which has 3 position.
Okay.
That was the first, it was called the EVC. And it was just a manual boost controller with 3 different positions. That's basically what it was.
Okay.
So you will push it
you
go, as you drive.
You get some
That's
more
why
boost.
the mile was a lot easier than the quarter mile. You got a lot of things to do in the quarter mile. In the mile, you can take your time and just hit a button.
Yeah.
You can
yeah,
because
you're explaining that to me, and I'm like, damn, a mile? And it's like, it almost sounds like a movie because there's so many things happening within that time.
Yeah,
so you can do a lot more. You can kind of play with,
Basically, I used to just it's like, I used to call it like Michael Jordan. He's in the zone, I'm in my zone. When I'm there, and usually when I never like to have somebody next to me.
Right.
Because they will either talk to me or something. I'm like, you sit there, you can't talk to me. Like, you don't understand.
Tunnel vision.
Yeah, you don't understand. You're not even here to me.
Right.
So it was tough, but it worked for me. I mean, I had a plan always. I always had a plan. Whether I lose or win, I still had a plan.
Right. So can you talk about how, like, back then the experience was? You said you had tunnel vision as opposed to racing in something like this, because these cars are like a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. Well, it's looking from the outside in is a lot different.
Okay.
So like that's one of the things when I say about horsepower, that you evolve into it.
Okay.
So I have evolved into this. So that situation that you see, that you fear, that you see that it's fast, we're very comfortable in once we're in there.
Okay.
And the safeties that we have are, the chances of having an issue, and an accident, that they're there, but they're less because of the safety that we have.
Okay.
So you get used to it. Usually it's just a day in the park for you, like just going through the sequence, unless something goes out of whack. Let's say like you break apart the car, there's oil in the tire, then it becomes a ride in a roller coaster. Right. Basically, it's a roller coaster ride. But other than that, it's just a walk in the park, basically.
When you take off in these cars, do you ever feel like the car's leaving you? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I used to
like a roller coaster.
So the way I describe it to people is, you're gonna get in the passenger side. I'm gonna put $100 on the dash, and you're gonna try to grab it, because you can't. So
yeah,
we have
videos like
we
that
have
too.
a G sensor. We get anywhere from 2.5 Gs to 3 Gs. So that's like a jet plane taking off, basically. But it pushes you back. It does. But we're so strapped in it that we don't feel it.
Yeah, there's no movement, basically.
Yeah, we don't feel it. Yeah, like we can't even move our necks because we have something strapped to our neck in case you crash. Your neck doesn't snap back and forth.
So you basically, if your head's in place, it's not as you don't feel the G's as much.
Yeah, you don't feel it. You don't until you see it back in the data. You don't even realize you did that.
Wow.
Basically.
So what is the fastest time you ran in this car? First of all, what are you racing in now?
So this is a A86 Corolla, a 1985 Corolla GTS. Basically, it's part. It's my roots. Basically, that's what I grew up on. In the later years, also, but it's what I grew up on, and it has a 2JC motor, and we gone 656 at 217.
656
at 217.
And you trapped what?
217 miles an hour.
217.
That's right.
There was a car here that did a similar number yesterday. I'm not sure what car it was.
Yeah, they went 640. Yes,
it was, right?
They went 640.
Dude, that was impressive. I think it was a rotary, no?
Yeah, rotary.
It was. Dude, that car boogie. It's loud.
You're gonna see way faster than that this weekend.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, you're gonna see some 5-second pass.
So what made you go with a 2J?
It's weird because I'm a Honda guy in heart. I started with Hondas. My shop was based on Hondas, and it still is for the most part. But a customer of mine called Jos Frampena decided to buy this car, and he said he'll buy it if I drive it. It was an interesting story because I was out of racing for 10 years.
Okay.
My daughter was going into college, and I basically just wanted my daughter and my son to just graduate high school. I told them I'll be fine with graduating high school, but she decided she got accepted into Penn State. And
oh wow.
Money was
tight.
Penn
State is a big school, yeah.
So I decided to put my race car apart and set it in parts, gather the money, and actually see what we can do to make her afford. She couldn't get the loan on her own in those days. We had to either put the loans in ourselves or come up with some money too.
Yeah.
And there were loans for people, but you got to make like $10,000 a year to get that loan.
It's
and
expensive. Yeah.
We were making more than that, so they wouldn't give us the loan, and it was $20,000 a semester.
Yeah.
So I'm like, she's making the effort, so I stopped racing, and we struggle. My wife and I struggle, but we pull it through, and she graduated. So I'm very proud of her now. Yeah.
So it's a blessing that you're actually able to still, have a car like this and actually have a shop.
Yeah. So then I came back, and he's like, "You got to drive." So I'm like, "Man, I'm kind of better now." All right. All right. We'll try it.
Yeah.
And look where I'm at now. I'm stuck.
Look where I'm at.
I'm stuck with it again now. Yeah.
Dude. So how much power is this car making?
So we're making 1,900 horsepower right now.
1,900. Mm-hmm. And is that like the most you've made on this?
That's the most we made.
The most? So what are you looking to do today?
At least my 650 back.
650?
Yeah. Because we made the 650 and we haven't ran it again. But we ran some 660, 670, 680s. We kind of try to go faster and change things, and it backfires as usual. You got to come back to things.
Right.
So we made a little bit more power. At that time I was making 1,800. We made a little bit more power now. We'll see what we can get, and if, like we say, if all the planets line up, we'll be okay.
Yeah. So does your shop DRT, where is this located?
So I'm in South Amboy now. I was 20 years in Queens, New York. That's where mostly everybody knows me from.
Right.
But now I'm in South Amboy, New Jersey. Very happy there.
Jersey's cool.
Life is easier now.
Yeah. Manhattan New York is tough.
Oh yeah, New York was fighting with the ticket guys, fighting with the cleanup guys, with the sanitation.
A lot of cars in the street.
Yeah. I was in a dead end street, which was a good thing for me.
Oh, you were at Dead End Street.
I was a dead end street, but they still come once in a while and bother me. But now I'm very happy where I'm at. It's working pretty good. I'm actually, like I tell people, I'm actually on my way out, so I'm by myself. Before I used to have 4 workers.
Right.
Good guys. They all. I'm very happy for them. They all grew out and into different ventures. Some of them have shops themselves, and
right.
I'm very proud that I was able to be part of that and in the learning experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what kind of cars do you work on at the shop? Like what?
Mostly imports nowadays.
Mostly imports.
Hondas for the most part. Hondas for the most part. Some 2Js. Now they see that 2J fans come over, but mostly imports and mostly electronics. But what happened was I evolved and I got into road racing, which was my passion from the beginning. I never used to drag race, but drag race is the least expensive thing you can do in racing. Road race takes a lot more money. So I do a lot of consulting for road racing.
Wow. Okay.
And that really paid off in the bills because I get to travel to different countries, different states, and do my consulting and get paid really well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm starting to find that a lot more. The people that are here are like 100% into cars and racing. You know, it's not just like I'm sure some people have hobbies.
Correct.
But I love the fact that I get to, talk to people who are actually doing this full time.
And most people ask me, for the most part, that, what if you went to a school? The only thing I did was in high school, I did a little bit. Most of the stuff I learned with experience, trial and error. Don't that's one thing I want to tell them. Don't ever be afraid to fall or to error. Never be afraid of that. It's only going to make you stronger.
Yeah.
I made plenty of mistakes, and you just grow from it and become stronger. That's it. Most people are afraid that I'm not gonna do it right, or think about when you were born. You didn't walk.
Right.
You didn't run. You didn't speak.
Yeah.
So
you got to crawl before you walk.
Experience is the best. Is the best way. Experience is the best way.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, is there anything else you can give the younger generation, or any advice you can give the younger generation as far as when it comes to street racing?
I mean, for the most part, just don't believe what you see on social media.
Don't believe me.
And stay focused. I mean, the way I look at it nowadays, I feel there's a lot of pressure on the new generation or the kids now on social media because they see things and then they want to do the same thing. Like when they do the challenges and all that stuff, and they feel the pressure that they have to do it.
Yeah.
And it's that's why we see so many kids with depression and all these things now, and it's because they feel the pressure that they have to do it. No, be yourself. Always be yourself. Always think positive. Always stay positive. Why are you gonna think that something's gonna go wrong? Those are humans' mistakes that everybody makes. I made them, so I really like to pass it on to them to think. Yeah, listen, it's okay to fail. Just now learn why you fail and become better. And that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, nowadays, I also say that my generation was the last generation to go and do something without a college degree. Now everybody needs a college degree, which is something that you come out of college, you don't even have any experience. But you need a college degree. I can have 10-year experience and they hire the guy with the college degree.
Yeah.
So it's a tougher situation for them out there.
Right.
They come out with all this debt from college and then they have to work and there's no work out there. So I mean, they have it harder than us. We could do anything. I never graduated high school. That's why I wanted my kids to actually do that. To me, that would be, my generation now will have a better accomplishment than me. She graduated college. Well, she overpassed me now. She's my retirement plan.
She's your retirement plan.
Yeah, she's my retirement plan. But that's always my advice to everybody is stay positive. Don't be afraid to fail.
Wise words. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, man. I really appreciate it. I'm happy that we got to do this interview, and I actually had the pleasure of sitting down with you. Much success to you and your business, and I hope to see this car rip and run today. I didn't get to see it yesterday, but hopefully we can see this thing rip and run. I'm really curious to see what
we got a run today, then we got 2 tomorrow and 2 more Saturday. So we got 5 altogether.
Awesome.
We'll see if we do good. And I want to thank you guys for having me. I actually saw all the clips where they mentioned me. And it was, it was funny because everybody kept sending them to me.
Yeah, everyone was like talking so much nonsense, but I was like, you know what? Let me interview you so you can clear it up and kind of tell your story.
Yeah, good,
You know?
good. I appreciate the time. Thank you. Thank
Appreciate
very
you.
much.
Where can the viewers find you? Sorry.
Okay, so you can catch me. I have my Instagram and Facebook, DRT Racing. I have my YouTube channel, which I just opened up in May, and it's called Ralphy's Racing World.
Okay.
And also Instagram, Ralphy's Racing World. They can catch me there. I'll see if I can give some tech information in the YouTube channel, and mostly, for the most part, right now, I got a couple of videos just about myself, so people know my regular everyday life, because I have a life, people. Some people think I don't, that I'm racing and I'm doing this all the time, but like we all got bills to pay and we have a life.
Yeah. No, of course. I agree. So I'll definitely put that in the link, or I'll put that in the description below for you guys to check out his content as well and show him some support and love. And then, so that concludes this episode. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.